Welcome to episode 5 of Building Blocks with Brendan. Today we're speaking with one of my friends, Tyler, who I met at Next 36 as both young entrepreneurs. Since we last met, he has made a very successful real estate business. And really what's interesting about his story and how he started was that there wasn't a huge upfront cash investment. Although there was some risk, there was some finances required, he really started his business with as much bootstrapping as you can. Over the past years, he was able to take his small multi-bedroom apartments, multi-unit houses, and really expand from there. At his peak, he had about over 60 units he was managing, which is hyper successful for anyone to do in multiple years. Since the success, he really took a sight at himself and really figured out what he wanted to do with his life. And he's actually taking this time to move overseas to Spain, which is very exciting. What's really interesting speaking with Tyler was not only how he created this mini real estate empire, but also how he was able to really focus on himself and really focus on enjoying his life. Now that he is still relatively young, he's completely financially independent, which is something a lot of people can't say. And I think that's one of the interesting things of speaking to him was really understanding what is your goals in life? For him, he wanted to have health, be active, and be able to be near the water. And he chose to do that while he was still young enough to enjoy his life. And I think that's something everyone can respect, but also look into in ways of really ensuring that you're living your life and the life you want and not what other people expect of you. Hope you guys enjoy this episode, learn a little bit about real estate, and hopefully, set your eyes into investing in other things. I know a lot of my friends, a lot of my colleagues, when you think of real estate, you always think of it as something you'll do when you're older or something when you have a ton of money in the bank, something you can invest in. But when speaking with Tyler, it really opened my eyes how you don't need a huge pile of cash to get started. And really with hard work, just like any business, you can become hyper successful in quite a short bit of time. Although there's a lot of work, although there is some luck, the most important thing is working hard and understanding how to work within any industry. Hopefully you guys enjoy this episode and learn a little bit more. We're connecting, Tyler. So we met 5-6 years ago now. Next 36, we chit-chatted in a swimming pool. That's how we became friends and kind of connected.
Right.
And at the time, both of us were unsuccessful in getting to, the finalists, as we would say. But we both kind of took unique turns. And you became a little bit of a superstar in your own rights in your hometown here and there. But also big moves for you moving overseas, going to Spain. But since then, I've had some success in real estate. But from my point of view, you're one of my few friends who have been in the real estate game and kind of did the real estate thing. I always assumed it was something where you need a ton of cash and it was something you had to wait 30 years to make money on. But you've still seemed to make it pretty consistent and kind of developed a business around it at a relatively young age with not intense, I'm assuming, cash up front to start it. So how did you get into real estate? Everyone knows what a house is, but how did you get into that business? And then how did you keep growing it to be an actual business from there?
Yeah. So hey man, one, fantastic to be here. Thank you for hanging out with me. I think the big thing for me was I chose a market that I could afford, which I didn't overextend myself. I was making a $40,000 a year salary. So, I had to be extremely realistic with myself, what I could afford. And then also, I think at the time, I only had like $800 in my bank account. So there was no down payment opportunity really there. And there certainly wasn't any kind of future look at how am I going to be able to come up with a down payment. So it really was an inner perspective or an inner look into how can I do this with what I currently have, not with what I have a future goal and I'm putting up a Pinterest board and all these kind of things. It's like, no, I need to do this now because I worked in startups in tech and I was definitely getting fired at some point soon. So, the runways of tech, man, you're looking at 6 to 8 months. Sometimes you're thinking, okay, I'm going to have this career for 10, 15 years where the company only can exist for maybe 2 max, right? If they can survive. So yeah, that was really I was looking at how to do things. And it all started with $9,000 that was essentially loaned to me. I can say that now, but yeah, it was essentially loaned to me by 2 friends that believed in me a lot. And they gave me $9,000 to put towards this house. And the house made, good enough cash flow which was one of the reasons why they gave me the 9,000, was because they knew that I could pay them
Mhm.
back. And that was the down payment, right? $160,000 duplex for at 5% down, $9,000. And so, again, chose a market that I could afford, but also chose a place that, made financial sense to purchase. And then how I was able to grow, I guess, like, is just the classic one that I kind of tell people, but it's true. Like, it is very standard to say, but I just didn't take no as an answer. So
Mhm.
a lot of people come to me and they'll say, okay, how did you get a yes from the bank? And it's like,
Mhm.
well, you can't really get a yes from a bank if you don't fit their little box. So
Mhm.
if you don't fit their box, then it is what it is. Move on to the next bank, though. Keep on going.
Mhm.
You'll get a no, you'll get a no, you'll get a no until you get a yes. And when you get that yes, that's all you need to purchase that property, right?
Mhm.
So now it's just about finding the yes. And the easiest way now to find a yes is build strong relationships with commercial bankers or mortgage brokers that know
Mhm.
you, that know your profile, and you don't have to continue sending them the T1s of last year, T4s of
Mhm.
this year, the year, all this kind of stuff, right? You
Mhm.
can just say, hey, this is the property that I want to buy, and then they'll go out and figure out how to get it. So
Mhm.
that's how it kind of works now. But it was definitely a grind, definitely a hustle,
Mhm.
the classic, Um, a lot of my mental health kind of went
Mhm.
out the door when I was doing it. But now I can certainly say that that 2 years of hustle, that 2 years of unhealthy behaviors to be
Mhm.
able to do that, um, created a lifestyle and created a way for me to be extremely healthy and focus strictly on my health and not have to worry about
Mhm.
money at all. Of course, there's, what can I do with my money? That
Mhm.
is a worry, but it's not that I'm never going to have money likely
Mhm.
again. So, yeah, at 27, obviously, that's a huge, mind bender
Mhm.
where everyone else is, maybe struggling or, could be struggling. And that's tough on me as well to think about that. But
Mhm.
yeah, this is certainly like real estate was my engine. There's thousands of ways
Mhm.
to do it.
And it's really interesting what you said with like really staying within your means. I think one of the hardest things, especially if you do real estate as like like you said, a tech startup, is that everyone wants to get to like a unicorn status
Hmm.
very quickly. And when you even look at like cash flows on a house, like the more expensive the house, the more cash you're getting in. So it's hard to be like, no, I'd rather minimize my risk, or like I can only afford this realistically. Let me stay here, and then in a few years keep increasing it exponentially or keep increasing along the lines. And I think that lesson or that view is obviously important for real estate, but also important for like any business you start when it's like, hey, we probably can't support 100,000 users right now, but we can support, 100 or 1,000 while we iterate and pivot and kind of get there and kind of have that same, like you said, almost like startup mentality around things where it's like, hey, we need to grow, I guess you say safely within your means, but everything's a risk. But so you start with one location, it grows from there. How quickly do you hop to your second one? Or was the plan to keep getting more and more properties under your belt? Or was it more of a, I have a little bit of cash on the side now, let me do this as a side hustle or as a side revenue? Or how long till you were like, okay, this is my full focus? Or did it start off like that?
No, it definitely didn't. I started, and you had said earlier, like the more expensive a property is, the more
Mhm.
cash flow. That theory in it doesn't actually work because a lot of people right now, in particularly,
Mhm.
with what date we have, it's March 23rd,
Mhm.
2021. So, during a global pandemic, prices are going incredibly up in all markets across Canada.
Mhm.
You could overspend a lot of money on a property, and there would be absolutely no cash flow. So, like,
Mhm.
definitely need to look in your properties because there's no cash flow in Toronto for most part. There's no cash flow in Halifax. There's no cash flow in BC. It's very, very hard to find good cash flowing properties. Um, so, of course, in saying that, it's really important when you're trying to vet a property that you talk
Mhm.
about, or that you learn about the rules of thumbs, and that you learn how to look at
Mhm.
an income and expense sheet. And that's really all it is. But yeah, so I started with one
Mhm.
property, and then bought that one in October 2018, bought another one in January 2019, and then realized, okay, I can do it pretty quick actually, so might as well just continue. And so I just continued, and it did
Mhm.
become like a focus in my life, but I was still working full time for this other
Mhm.
company. And real estate doesn't take that much time out of you.
Mhm.
So you can work full time. I could still work full time and do what I'm doing. It's just it would
Mhm.
drain me, and I didn't want to. So
Mhm.
with being able to do that, I just stopped. And then also in saying that too, once I didn't want to, or once I stopped being an employee, my business actually grew
Mhm.
significantly, like way more fast
Mhm.
than I ever had planned. So I went from, I think it was like my first year I had something like, let's say, 15 units or something like that, or 20 units
Mhm.
or something, right? And then the second
Mhm.
year I went to 65, right? It tripled um,
Mhm.
in just 1 year. And so if I continue doing it like this, it's crazy. So that's kind of what I mean. It's if you can
Mhm.
focus on it, then certainly do that. But yeah, I just kept on buying. I just kept on doing it. The process to get there is different for everyone.
Mhm.
So I like it wouldn't be of any value to like share about that. But mine
Mhm.
was, I just talked with like the standard one is you talk to a realtor. You work with a realtor that's investment friendly, that understands the investment game, was a like likely was an investor
Mhm.
themselves. Um, and that person typically will become your mentor, or hopefully anyway become your
Oh,
mentor,
interesting.
to
Mhm.
get you in the door to new deals and connect you with bankers in the area and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's what I
Mhm.
did, is I connected with a realtor that was a multi millionaire developer, and
Mhm.
he just so happened to be a realtor as
Oh.
well.
In we touched on this kind of interesting. So when I think of, I mean, real estate and investment properties, one thing that always confused me is that if it is cash flow positive or can make cash flow, why would someone be selling it? I
Mm.
mean, that's I feel like a question a lot of people have or think about, like, oh, if I'm going to make money by doing nothing, although there is still some work, and probably talk about that in a bit, why would they ever sell?
Great question. I actually got a girl like pretty heated up on me on Instagram a couple weeks ago because I had told on Instagram like I'm selling everything, and someone was
Mhm.
like, "That's so short-sighted." And I was like, "I don't think you understand this." So
Mhm.
how it works is, let's say you're making $1,000 a month on that $160,000 property,
Mhm.
right? That's freaking awesome.
Mhm.
You're making $12,000
Mhm.
a year cash on that one property
Mhm.
after paying all your expenses, after whatever.
Mhm.
The issue is like if the roof collapse, one, yeah, insurance might step in, but insurance always figures out a way to hurt you. Like they always figure out a way that they're not responsible, or that, oh, they're only a little bit
Mhm.
responsible, and then it still ends up
Yeah.
paying you. Like, I mean, not always, but most of the time it'll happen. I had flood insurance and it
Mhm.
flooded, and then they said, well, it only flooded because of this, this, and this, and we don't cover that. Like, although it was flooded, that part of the flood damage
Mhm.
isn't covered. And it's like, well, shouldn't have got the flood damage, or shouldn't have got the flood insurance. It cost me an extra, you know,
Mhm.
a few $100s a year, whatever it was, right? So, um,
Mhm.
but yeah, uh, like in building your real estate, you want cash flow so that you can show the bank that you're making money off of your income properties. It's not just liabilities. It's not
Mhm.
coming over personal
Mhm.
expense. So you're making good money off of it. The banks love that. They'll give you more loans. So that's why
Mhm.
you want a cash flowing property. But why you would want to sell is because it only makes $1,000 a month, and if something breaks, it's at least going to cost three. So that's 3 months of your cash
Mhm.
flow gone. And let's say nothing happens in that 3 months. That's great. That's a freaking amazing 3 months, but that never
Mhm.
happens. There's always something wrong. So it's not that it's actually making you money. It's just paying for the maintenance, and it's paying for
Mhm.
the problems that tend to come up with a property. A great cash flowing property still isn't always making great money. That's why you
Mhm.
see these people own like 1,000 units, and it's just an individual. It's because now they're actually making real money, right?
Mhm.
Like 600 to a million a year um, in cash flow, and that's
Mhm.
fantastic. But the issue is, if it's only making $1,000 a month, and you have damages or whatever,
Mhm.
then it's really tough. So you want to sell those properties when there's a lot of appreciation. So let's say
Mhm.
that $160,000 property that you bought 2 years ago is now worth 230 or
Mhm.
250. It's like, yeah, that's $70,000, or to
Mhm.
$100,000 in equity that you could just take out in cash and reinvest into something even bigger, like a bigger
Mhm.
project. And you started at 9,000 cash in, and now you got to 70,000. That's
Mhm.
pretty great returns. So that's why you see it that way.
Mhm. And that's super. That's one thing I think might also make people fear with real estate is that you buy a property for a purpose of investment, and then you can't find someone to rent it, or things fall apart, and now you're in the I don't know if you say in the hole, but then now you have to get things fixed, and you have to fix things yourself. So I feel like with anything, there is obviously some risks to anything, but especially with real estate, the fixing up of things. How'd you get around that? Because I'm assuming you're buying these properties. You're not like, oh, these are pristine, nothing's going wrong. Like, were
No.
you on YouTube a lot, fixing things yourself? Because I'm assuming you don't have just cash to pay for people to fix up things here and there. How'd you get around that? Like, I don't say hurdle, but that challenge that can always happen.
Yeah, I didn't get around it. You have to pay for it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the thing there is I owned, so I ended up hiring so many contractors all the time that I decided that it
Mm-hmm.
was likely just best for me to start my own and just
Oh,
hire my own
interesting.
guys. And then once I hired the right guys, it just so happened that, great people tend to do a great job fast,
Mm-hmm.
and bad people tend to do a bad job slow. So,
Yeah.
I was hiring these like companies that were doing bad jobs
Mm-hmm.
slow, and they were charging me up the butt. And then I decided, okay, it's likely best for me just to end up paying my own guys
Mm-hmm.
salaries to do it, and I'm their sole employer. So I started doing that, but they did such a great job so fast that I ended up not having enough work for them on my own
Mm-hmm.
properties in the end. So uh, I started taking on new jobs from
Mm-hmm.
Facebook ads, Kijiji ads, like around town, putting up signs, all that kind of stuff. Started
Mm-hmm.
getting a bunch of calls and turned it into quite a business. But that's a crazy business, something certainly I wouldn't recommend
Mm-hmm.
doing ever. And so I sold that one too because I was like, man, that's tough. That's a tough business. The
That makes a
construction
lot
industry is
yeah.
tough.
It's construction's so interesting because there is quite a bit of money in it, but
Mm,
the barrier to entry can also be quite small for a lot of jobs here and there. So it's always a unique industry I find.
it is,
What
yeah. There
Mhm.
was there was a company in Toronto that actually that was pretty interesting to me. Forget what they were
Mhm.
called. Um, but yeah, that's all they did is they were like a tech company
Mhm.
that focused on construction. So obviously they
Mhm.
saw a need to simplify the communication
Mhm.
process, I guess, and simplify the project management of construction jobs because typically the same people that are nailing your house together are
Mhm.
not great communicators or are not great business
Mhm.
owners. Um, and so, yeah, they saw that need, but their company didn't work out. They made a few bad plays,
Mhm.
but yeah, that's kind of where I was at. Is I was like this business major that thought, okay, I could certainly walk into this very old business
Mhm.
model and then fix a few things up and make it pretty successful. And I did, but it still like took a huge toll on me.
Mhm.
So I just sold it.
And what's really interesting you brought up, it sounds like really the idea is to like really mitigate risk. So is it the more property you own, does the risk lessen or is the risk always the same? Or how did you
Lesson.
view it?
Yeah,
Lesson?
certainly. Yeah. So it's like diversifying your portfolio,
Mm-hmm.
in my view. So yeah, that's certainly the way that I saw it. Is I was like, meh, if I'm gonna do this,
Mm-hmm.
I might as well own because if one property goes bad, right,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have a bunch of other properties helping out
Mm-hmm.
to pay the bills. So when I had a big maintenance problem, I didn't have the cash flow from the other 10 properties to help out
Mm-hmm.
in paying for those
Mm-hmm.
problems. Um, and I mean, like something's always going wrong with properties, but it's really nice to have like a bunch of properties helping out towards the
Mm-hmm.
pile of need. And so that's why I loved buying more properties. One, I love the chase, so I love
Mm-hmm.
like hunting new deals and closing on them, and it's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Building a portfolio,
Mm-hmm.
bigger, bigger, bigger. But at some point in time, like especially in a market like now, it's very interesting just to like sell out because it was causing, some issues here and there.
Mhm,
Just, and it's exciting just getting out, making some money, and then reinvesting that into something that you get excited
mhm,
about next, right?
mhm.
So that's what
And
we're doing now.
and when I think of like investment property or investing, were all your properties within like your geolocation, or did you ever go like outside the province, outside the city?
All of my properties were 3 hours away. Yeah, outside
I
of
feel
province.
yeah, I feel like I would assume that's a smart move, just so if that, like you say, if something goes wrong, you can be there to act, not have to outsource or kind of have a broken chain of command there. Seems like it'd be smart to like show up, be like, I want to see what's going on. How
Right.
how did you find tenants and stuff? I feel like that almost is a full time job, being almost like a real estate agent on that front, being like, got a house here, who's interested, or
Yeah.
how did you go around that, or is it just digitally online, or did you have to get a little bit fancy with your marketing?
No, yeah, no. I just went to normal banks
Mhm,
to get approved, and
mhm,
and then I went to my realtor who kept on bringing me new deals. So,
mhm,
but that's the thing is like if I was in Toronto, I'd have to be extremely creative and a huge hustler to even find a good deal. Um, and I just figured, there's probably easier markets, and that's exactly what I did. Right, like I
mhm,
realized that there's no need that I have to, hire someone to drop off little papers into someone's mailbox and say, "I'll buy your house," or
mhm,
those kind of things, right? So I knew a lot of those people, and that's certainly one way to become a
mhm,
multimillionaire. It just wasn't the right path for me.
mhm.
So, um, yeah, I just worked with a realtor the whole time, and it worked out really good.
Mhm. And for finding tenants, how did that come to be?
Right. So finding tenants, just put it on Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji. It's super easy. But like demand right now is so crazy that
Mhm,
I could show you. Actually, no, I deleted all the messages because we sold it. But um, yeah, we had a unit available, and I put it on Facebook Marketplace. And
mhm,
how I do things is like you come through me so that I
mhm,
send it to my property manager.
mhm,
Um, but I'm kind of the first vet,
mhm,
so if you can get through me, then you're typically pretty good to like get the unit.
mhm.
Um, anyway, and yeah, we we got, I think the first day putting that ad out, we got something like 110 applications. So there's no problem with people looking for apartments right now.
Wow, that's quite a few. How do you go about like is pricing complex, or do you just kind of look around what's in the market and choose a price, or is there a lot of like theory behind it, or do you just pick a price and really ensure someone's always staying in it?
I'm sure that there's like someone that found a really complicated model to
Mhm,
make this complicated, but human nature is that we try to make things complicated. The easiest way of
mhm,
doing things is just going on Facebook Marketplace or Kijiji and
mhm,
finding out what a place would go like, and then
mhm,
putting $100 more and seeing
mhm,
if it rents out. If it rents out, then solid, you're pumped, right?
mhm,
So that's kind of how I always did things. Is I would find like what things sell for in the same kind of either
mhm,
area or class
mhm,
B is what my class is. So I'm not like
mhm,
a high end um,
mhm,
rental company. I
mhm,
tend to do like um, it's still modern, but it's like middle class.
mhm,
And yeah, so we would just find other middle class units and then add $100 to our
mhm,
purchase price or our rental price and see
mhm.
how many people came our way, and that was it.
And did you have any employees that work with you
Yeah, I
doing
had
all
5.
this?
Yeah,
Oh wow.
yeah. But
How quick? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, yeah, we had to let them go,
Mhm,
recently with selling the property, so,
mhm.
yeah.
It's interesting. How quickly did you get employees that work with you? I mean, you've
First
only
day.
been first day,
First
really?
day I had not exactly an employee.
Yeah.
He was, a contractor, I guess, at that point. He was, on contract, not a contractor.
Mhm.
But, yeah, he was on contract as my, property manager because I was 3 hours away, so there's no way that I was gonna be able to let someone else in to their unit if they locked themselves out or something like that without a property manager.
Oh, that's interesting. Because that's the one thing I was thinking as well. Is like how if you're having all these properties, how are you physically being in? Like you said, there's always things going wrong. Always people locking
Yeah.
themselves out. How do you be in 1,000 places at once? And I guess contracting makes sense because you would assume having employees would be almost cost prohibitive starting out because people are expensive in general, and especially if it takes a while to get some good cash out while not being zero, like at least having semi cash positives or semi reserves if there are things that are going wrong.
Yeah.
It's such a risky thing, it seems.
Property management, though, is a little different industry than
Mm.
just like a salaried position, like a
Oh,
startup or
interesting.
like
Hmm. Hmm.
another company would be. It's not a full time gig; it's a on demand thing, right? So you pay a
Hmm.
percentage of your gross income. Typically, is how it works.
Oh, that makes it a little more
Yeah,
manageable, I guess, because you don't
for
have
sure.
to put liabilities. So, very interesting story. You kind of been really doing a lot in a relatively short period of time. Most of you think of like real estate, people are like, I've been doing this for 73 years. Like
Yeah.
when I bought this house, it was a farmland. I got for 10,000. Now it's $75 million. You rarely hear a story of like, oh, I got and viewed this more as a business, more as a way of earning revenue, not just like a way of throwing money at something and then in 20 years looking back and being like, oh, I made some money on this, really taking more initiative for it. But now you're really taking the steps and kind of going, like you said, your focus now is on your own life, your own health, kind of enjoying life because you
Yeah.
have the ability to, and kind of selling all this and leaving to do kind of going to Spain and doing your own thing now. What made you, I don't know if it was a switch or made a decision to say, hey, I'm going to take a step out, kind of focus on myself more? What made you take that switch? And do you feel you're going to be missing the, like you said, the hunting, the drive, the hunting for new properties, and how you're going to fill that and satiate that need?
So yeah, certainly, just because I'm out of residential real estate doesn't mean that I'm out of real estate at
Mhm.
all. I've been spending more money than I ever did before now, right?
Mhm.
Buying new property. So, yeah, one thing. I mean, like right now, I'm building a self storage facility
Mhm.
and buying another one, and
Mhm.
then we're building a multi unit in another market, and there's still lots of projects out there that I'm working on.
Mhm.
So that the chase is still
Mhm.
very much there. It's just that it's not in the same realm anymore, or in residential at all
Mhm.
anymore. So I don't have to deal with like tenants as much. It's more
Mhm.
in I mean, with self storage, it's like you leave your stuff in storage and you come maybe once a month, or
Mhm.
and there's no like plumbing, there's no anything. So
Mhm.
it's a much easier market to be in for me,
Mhm.
especially when I move to Spain.
Mhm. That's so exciting. Good luck. Very interesting story for such a period of time and great connecting.